Hello Year 2, it's Miss Buckley and I'm going to be going through your history lesson for today. So your learning question is, can I explain the events of the Great Fire of London? Your steps to success? I can identify the baker who started the fire. I can vocalize how the fire started. And I can identify how London improved. Now let's start your learning. So what have we been learning about? We have been learning about the Great Fire of London. Now, I would like you to have a think or to talk to somebody, if there's somebody available in your home, and look at these pictures to help you. What happened during the Great Fire of London? Explain the events to them. You can pause the video here and do that. Okay, so now we know that it all started when there was a baker baking bread in a baker shop, and the baker's name was Thomas Farrier. Then all of a sudden a spark fell out of the oven and the baker shop caught on fire, which started the Great Fire of London. There was a man called Samuel Pepys who saw that the fire was started, and he began to record all the information in his diary, which is why we know the events that occurred. Lots of people came together and they tried to use leather buckets to scoop water from the River Thames to try and put out the fire. They also tried to use fire hooks to pull down the houses, and also the fire spread because the houses were so close together and they were made of wood. St. Paul's Cathedral, which is a very famous landmark, burnt down. And then the fire started to eventually calm down, and it started to calm down because they used the fire hooks to pull the houses down, to demolish the houses, and the wind stopped blowing so vigorously, stopped partially, so the fire was eventually able to calm down. And then on the 5th day, because the fire, London was burning for 5 days, on the 5th day, that was when the fire stopped. So, this is a picture of the baker Thomas Farrier, who was baking in the baker shop on Pudding Lane at the time the fire started. Now today for your history lesson, we are going to pretend to be the baker and we are going to write an apology letter. I want you to have a think about, who will we address the letter to? Who was the king at the time? And what are the features of a letter? We all know that because we did that in our English lessons last term. Now this is the letter that I've created of me pretending to be the baker Thomas Farrier. Let's very quickly look at the features of the letter. Let's remind ourselves. So at the top right hand corner I have the address, and I've just made this address up. It says The Palace, London, W12 3TF. That's just an address that I've made up from my mind. Then I have today's date, which is Wednesday the 3rd of February 2021. I have who the letter is to, I have the letter introduction, I have the message, I have the next steps, and I have who the letter is from. So those are the features of a letter, and those are the features that your letter should have. Now let's look at what I've written in my letter, and remember, you are writing the events that occurred during the Great Fire of London. So my letter says, to King Charles II, I am writing to apologise for starting the Great Fire of London. A spark from the oven fell onto the floor and started the fire. Since the houses were made of wood, the fire spread very quickly. We were able to put the fire out by using leather buckets to scoop water from the River Thames and by using fire hooks to pull the houses down. Even though London burnt for 5 days, the city has now improved. London now has houses that are made of wood and a fire brigade. I will make sure that a fire never happens again by closing the oven door and by looking at what I am doing. I hope you can forgive me, from Taurus Fariner. So that is my letter that I've written. Now, these are the things that you need to include in your letter. You need to tell me who the letter is to. And as we know, the king at the time of the Great Fire of London was King Charles II. You need to tell me what caused the fire. What happened? How did we put the fire out? How did the Londoners put the fire out? How did London improve after the fire? What will we do to make sure that a fire doesn't happen again? And then you are going to write who the letter is from. So what you can do is you can pause the video here to have these reminders on the screen for you as you write your letter. Off you go. Well done. I cannot wait to read all of your letters. I'm sure it is incredible. Now, if you would like to, our history lesson has finished, but if you would like to find out more about the Great Fire of London, you can have a look on the Museum of London website. Now, the link should be on our remote learning timetable, but if it isn't, that's fine. You can go into a Google search and you can go onto Google and type in the Museum of London. You will click the first result that comes up, which is the Museum of London website, and you will look for the section on the website that talks about the Great Fire of London, and you can find out so much more information about the Great Fire of London.